this is the first review that I'm doing for this year. Hopefully I'll get it edited by the end of the day on Monday, but we'll see. Yeah, for what? That'll be Monday the 9th, hopefully. But first, winner announcement. If you are a Patreon supporter, or if you support my channel through YouTube memberships, and there is 52 of you guys, I think that was the number, total that support the channel, one of you wins a knife every single month, and you win a knife that I reviewed in the previous month. In December, I didn't review very much, and since December's winner still hasn't contacted me, Leo Kleinzer. Leo, hopefully you're watching this video. Please email me, jake@CanadianCuttingEdge.com, so we can arrange your prize. But I did a random draw, and I go through my YouTube members first, and then through my Patreon list. The number that came up randomly was 12. It's Mr. Fidowski. Is that how it's pronounced? Fadinsky. What was I thinking? Fadinsky. Not his real name. At least I don't think it's his real name. I'm pretty sure it's not. Mr. Fadinsky, I've emailed him already and sent him a message on Patreon. And yeah, these guys get to pick from the knives that I reviewed in the previous 2 months. I'm even putting up that Cold Steel AD15 Light on there. You know, the first one of those two that responds, if they want that knife, they're going to get that knife. I'm going to sharpen it for them, and I'm going to give them other prizes as well. The other thing is I'm going to be doing a knife sale in January, and my supporters get first dibs. They get 2 full days of access to the knife sale before anybody else does. So if you're a supporter of mine, pay attention to your Patreon notifications or your YouTube notifications, because I will give advance notice before the sale starts. You know, I have had recently one guy stop supporting the channel because he complained that, you know, he came to the sale and almost everything was sold already. But, you know, I had been putting up notifications. You know, if you miss the notifications, the sale might surprise you, and then you'll find out the sale's half done, most of the stuff is gone, and, you know, I can't help that. I do give notifications to let you know that it's coming, and I can't control it, you know, if you don't see those notifications. So congratulations to the winners, and enough of that. What are we looking at today? We're looking at this. This is a TwoSun slip joint knife. Yes, I'm starting with a slip joint knife. This is the TS192, a Mazwan Mokhtar design, a classic back spring slip joint knife with a very funky blade shape. A little bit like a cleaver. I'm going to call it a modified Wharncliffe. Very, you know, deep handle, but not super thick. You know, it's a thick enough handle. It's actually fairly comfortable. There's going to be pros, there's going to be cons. Let's get to the tabletop and find out all about those things. Just check that out. 14C28N stainless steel right here. It's a satin finish, but it's somewhat polished. You can see that reflection just going nuts. And there we go. Mazwan Mokhtar is the designer. Sorry, hopefully I didn't butcher your name. I've reviewed a few of your knives. And that's it. The badging's nice and small. It's on the main bevel, which I don't really like, but the badging's fairly small. We've got a fuller here that looks like it's a bead blast finish inside that fuller. And, you know, the TwoSun emblem is right there. I think it would have been cool if they would have put that right in the fuller on, you know, all the information. It wouldn't wear off easily at all. Well, it's not like it's going to wear off. It's, you know, laser etched in there, but still. Anyhow, what we have is, you know, it rises up, and then we've got this huge clip right here. Like I said, a little bit like a cleaver, round belly, and nice sharpness choil. It's plenty big enough to be, you know, not a problem at all, because the plunge happens way back here. You know, the sharpness choil doesn't even come to the back of the plunge. I don't mind. It's a good sharpness choil. And the inside here, where do we have it? I'm trying to see where it stops on there. I can't see in there where there's a stop. You know, for when you close the knife to protect the edge. Old school knives, you know, that edge would slam into the back, the inside of that spring. Not this one, but it's not easy to see where it stops. But I'll take one of these handle scales off later on and see how it's constructed. But it's your classic back spring. You can see that spring back there coming out while it's traveling. But when it's all the way open, it's all the way locked. When it's at the half stop, it's all the way down. And then when it's closed, it's all the way down again. And, you know, simply a well-made, you know, sort of square-ended pivot. Not bad. More about this blade. Thin behind the edge. I really, really like this. Very thin. This thing slices and cuts very, very well. You're not going to have a problem going through whatever you need to go through. Grind angles and stuff are quite good. I'll give you all those details a little bit later on. But if you saw the unboxing for this, you know that it had an issue. There was some corrosion, a little bit of rust right in this area of the blade. And that little bit of rust, well, I got rid of it, but it's still, I don't know if you can see it. Hopefully, if I can get this to focus up here, right there, you can see those dots. Right now, those are just shadows because I got the rust out of there. I use Evapor-Rust. I soaked the blade in Evapor-Rust. It's gotten rid of all the rust, and it's not a problem anymore. But, of course, the evidence of the rust is still there, and I'm never going to be able to get rid of that. Now, for those of you who've purchased more than one TwoSun knife, you know that they usually come with a pretty good coat of oil on it. This one, you know, sort of had that, but, you know, somehow it got affected. On the other side here, there's a little bit of scratching on this side, and I think that's from when I was doing this kind of thing, rubbing it to try to see what was going on. I think I had, and I got to be much more careful with this. I did it recently as well to another blade. I was using a microfiber cloth. You know, this is just a paper towel right here, but I think I've scratched up the other side of the blade just a tiny bit. There is a little bit of damage to this blade. That's the blade. The handle, like I said, it's micarta. It's got a dip here. It comes up at the back a little bit. Major drop down, really deep at the end of the handle here. Big index finger choil. The balance point is right at the back of that finger choil. You know, I wouldn't mind if it was a little bit further that way, you know, closer to the pivot pin, but it's not bad. It feels quite good, fairly well balanced in the hand, and being so deep this way, you can easily get a very good grip on this knife, and I used it for a lot. Now, one thing you can't use this knife for, let me get a fake table, put a table in here. If you're cutting on a tabletop surface, you can't have your hand on there, or else you're just cutting with a tiny spot on the blade because you can't get down onto the table with the rest of the blade. Now, if your hand is off the table, you can do it. If you do most of your cutting in hand, maybe you're holding something in your hand and you're cutting on it and stuff, that's just fine. Two other things I forgot to mention, and that is there is a little bit of blade play side to side. It's a little bit loose. If you snug this up enough so there's no blade play, then it's pretty hard to move the blade in and out. So there's that. And when the knife is closed, the alignment's not perfect. It's a little bit off to one side, but it's pretty good. The hardware is T8 hardware. We've got two screws back here. We've got the pivot screw over here. I'm sure we've got washers in there. Let's take it apart and show you how it's made. Here I've taken it apart. The screws, there's no Loctite on any of these screws. I took the 3 screws out, and then of course I used my plastic prying tool to get in there and just sort of pried it loose like that for it to come out. Try to use, plastic or something to do that kind of thing. So like I said before, there's no liners anywhere. These 2 screws hold this spring plate in place. So this is spring steel here. You can see the tang of the blade. It's basically a square with a little bit of bumps and recesses in it. So that's the half stop that holds it open. And then that's when it's open, and that's what holds it. So yeah, it can be closed. Just use it carefully. The washer's on here. Let's see if I can use my nail to get this off. And here you can see the phosphor bronze washer. I'm going to clean that up a little bit. I'm not going to take it all the way apart because I'm not sure I'll be able to get it back together again. If I take the blade out, that spring's going to be further this way and not up along the edge. And the trick is you have to push that spring up while you're putting the blade in, and sometimes that's harder than it seems. Let's do it anyways. Take a risk. So 2 phosphor rounds washers, and those washers are just running right on the micarta. That's kind of unusual. That's not all that common, but I haven't seen a real problem with this. Now let's see this. Yeah, the pivot pin is free spinning, but I didn't have any problem taking it apart. And yeah, it's just round on that side. So yeah, that's as simple as the most simple kind of slip joint knife is made. And yeah, that's what you get. Let's go over all the sizes, dimensions, all those specs, all that information. First, the weight of this knife, 112 grams, 3.95 ounces. The factory sharpness of the edge, 145 best. That's right around average for the knives that I review. Not bad. The cutting edge length, 74.0 millimeters, which is 2.91 inches, but it is over 3 inches. The tip to the closest spot on the handle, 81.6 millimeters, 3.21 inches. So if you want a 3-inch knife, this is not it. The thickness of the blade, pretty thick, 3.28 millimeters, 0.129 of an inch, so just a bit over 1/8 of an inch. The blade depth, that's this measurement between the tips of my fingers, 40.3 millimeters, 1.59 inches. How thick is it right behind the grind at the edge? 0.31 millimeters, 12.5 thousandths of an inch. No wonder it slices and dices better than a Jinsu knife. The grind angles. This side's got an average of 19.2. This side's got an average of 17.4 degrees. Started at 17.5, ended at 17.3, so 0.2 degrees change. This side, 19.3 to 19.1, again, 0.2 degrees of change. It's very well sharpened. Of course, the grind angles aren't even on both sides, but they're pretty good. Compared to how most knives are sharpened, this is quite well done. The length of the handle measured this way, that is 110.9 millimeters, 4.37 inches. The grip area, it's right around 10 centimeters, just over, equal to about 4 inches. So that's not bad. The thickness of the handle, it's a little bit thicker right down the middle. It's not a flat slab, it's slightly rounded, so it's thickest right down the middle here, which is 13.1 millimeters, 0.515 of an inch. And the handle depth, that's this measurement right here. The biggest part is 36.8 millimeters, 1.45 inches. The handle depth when the knife is closed is biggest right here. That is 50.3 millimeters, 1.98 inches. And when it's open, the complete length, 199 millimeters, 7.83 inches. I didn't talk about the price. That's part of the specs, I guess. It's $49 at White Mountain Knives, but you can save 10% with coupon code CCE on everything that you buy at White Mountain Knives. That turns us into $44.10 US. And on the day I'm recording this, that's right around 59 Canadian dollars. And since it's a slip joint knife, don't worry, Canadians, it'll cross the border, no problem. You might have to pay duty or whatever, but it'll be safe to cross the border. Unless you get a very dumb CBSA agent. So the summary. By the way, I did nick my finger just slightly. I just don't want to get blood on a YouTube video. It's a very tiny, tiny cut. When I was reassembling it, I should have put masking tape over the edge. Anyhow, the summary. This is a very unusual knife. I think this is going to have a love-hate kind of feedback. There's people in the feed comments are going to say that thing's ugly, it's weird. Of course, people always balk against slip joint knives. There's always some people that are doing that. And the thing is, I like slip joint knives. I grew up on slip joint knives, and when you learn how to use a slip joint knife safely, you can use any knife safely. And because all the rules that you learn about how to treat a slip joint knife, you know, they translate to all other knives, and then you keep yourself safe, even if you do nick your finger. Anyhow, I've got oily skin, so one con on any, sort of polished blade is all the fingerprints that I leave behind. I'm not that fond of that. I do prefer stonewash blades. Your mileage will vary. It all depends on your DNA, I guess. But this knife is kind of cool. I like it. It's very comfortable in hand. You always know exactly which way your edge is facing with this broad handle here that's very indexable, so that's really good. nice and thin edge, nice grind angles, you know, decent steel. You know, yeah, we did get a little bit of corrosion on it. You know, that happens sometimes. That's not this model's fault. This is model T92. They're in the late 300s now in their models. They've made almost 200 more knives after this, different models. This thing might have been sitting in a box for 3 years before, you know, I got it. You know, between the factory and until, you know, I ordered it, it could have been sitting around a long time. That could be why. If you want to avoid that, just buy knives that have been very recently released, and then you lower that risk dramatically. But steel does corrode. Even stainless steel corrodes. It's just the nature of steel. So, you know, just treat it well and, you know, it'll stay good for a while. If you live, you know, next to the ocean or a very humid area, you might want to put a very little bit of oil on knives that I'm going to use with food potentially. I use some food grade oil, you know, some vegetable oil, whatever, and just put a very thin layer of oil on it, you know, and just do that every once in a while. But that's besides the point. I like this point that's right here. That's where it impacts, and I sort of briefly alluded to it earlier on. That point right there is what touches the inside. I don't know, you might even be, there you go. You can see that shiny point right there. That touches that, and that protects the edge from not, you know, getting bent when you close it. So it's got that nice little modern touch, better than traditional slip joints. Other than that, it's completely a traditional slip joint minus the liners. And, you know, good micarta can handle that. So it's a decent knife, good for a lot of jobs, certainly not piercing, although you could use that tip a little bit, like for packages, you know, that'll work just fine for that kind of thing. And it's a nice knife. I'm happy with it. Tell me what you think. Do you have one? Would you get one? Why not? Leave your comments down below. And by the way, I read every single comment on every single video, and I reply to over 99% of them. Thank you so much, my friends, especially to those who support the channel financially. I appreciate your help. And to everyone, remember, cut towards your chum, not your thumb.